This is Johnny Dosco. Stay tuned for another Score Sheet podcast. Holy Kadelka!
Hi, and welcome to another Score Sheet podcast. Today I'm happy to say we have as a guest a gentleman named Tom Wyliehart, who used to play Score Sheet baseball, took a break for a few years, and is now back with us again this year. Hi Tom, how are you?
Good. Yourself, Jeff?
I am doing excellent. Got softball games tonight to look forward to, and it's a beautiful day.
I just read through my weekly results, so I'm good.
Yeah, and did you do better than the guy that works for me named Tom also went 0-7? But since I'm in his league and fighting him for a wild card spot, I thought that was kind of excellent.
Yes, I definitely did better than him.
Well, that's good. He wasn't very happy a couple hours ago. 0-7 when you're fighting for a wild card spot at the last week of August is not really what you want to do.
Yeah, I had a week in August when I went 1-6 to create a playoff race in a division that I was winning, so that's made things more interesting.
Yeah, I'm just kind of, I get that feeling by watching my Giants. I think they've scored about 10 runs in the month of August.
Pretty close.
Yeah, it's disturbing. But there's fantasy baseball, and I've got a couple teams in the playoff hunt. So hopefully most folks listening to this also have some teams in the playoff hunt, which definitely makes September a little more fun.
Always.
Yeah. So you've one reason that I wanted to talk to you this year. You've been coming up with a file every week of probable pitchers for the week, which shows who's going to pitch more than once, starting pitchers, who's going to start twice, and probably more important, what teams those pitchers are pitching against. And don't you also give a little, advice about who you might want to start and not start based on their opponents?
Right, so it tracks who's going to start. They're very likely two-start pitchers. They're pretty likely two-start pitchers, and it grades them on strength of schedule, which is a combination of opposing lineups and which park they're. And then basically gives A, B, C, D, E, F grade to pitchers. So if you have two guys who are kind of close to skill level, you know who you want to slot in for that week.
Right, so if you have Ray Halladay, you're still going to have him in your rotation kind of regardless of who the heck he's pitching against.
Yeah, there were weeks where, Roy Halladay's at an F assignment because he's in Colorado, but of course you're still going to start him.
Yeah, though, of course, Colorado has changed in the last couple of years. It's not like it was 5 years ago when it didn't matter who you were, you just didn't want to pitch a guy in Colorado.
Yeah, that's certainly true. Colorado's, even when the Rockies are at home, if they're facing the Giants or Padres rotations, that's not a great hitting assignment anymore.
But as you said, if you've got, like most of us, after your first pitcher or two, most of us have 4 or 5 pitchers that in any given week we're going to start, say, 3 of them, but we're not really sure which 3 of the 5 to start. So your file will give us a little extra help based on your ideas of, like you said, opponents faced and all.
Right. And it factors in projections for the year, shifting more towards year-to-date performance as you go on. Again, which park they're actually pitching in. Try to figure out who's going to be hurt or in the minors for the week, and use their substitute stats for the grades, a few things like that.
And then it's not just park effects, but it's also lineup. So I gather, like, for instance, this year, to pick on my Giants, if you've got a pitcher that's facing the Giants, you're probably more likely to want to use that pitcher.
Yes, facing the Giants is pretty much always a grade.
Well, that's good. So you, like I said at the start, you played Score Sheet years ago, and then you took a break for a few years, 5 or 6.
Yeah, just at one point decided I didn't have time for it anymore, and then I was doing sort of Yahoo leagues and those sorts of things, and then decided this off season that I did have time. I was getting tired of those formats, largely for the day-to-day drudgery of it, and so I decided to get back into Score Sheet.
Yeah, there are a lot of daily games out there, which, actually, in our last podcast, I talked about why we don't have a daily game, just because if you have a simulation, I think the game itself and the stats and all work a lot better if you use a week's worth of stats. But it's also true that, we obviously cater to folks who are pretty fanatical about baseball. We also have, an awful lot of people that are busy. They have jobs or kids or both or other hobbies. And as you said, one thing about a daily game, it almost becomes a question of who puts the most time into studying things like rain projections for the East Coast that day, or waiver wire every single day or something, and less about who knows more about baseball.
That's the problem with those games. I was playing leagues where you basically do rack up points for the whole year, but you can do daily lineup changes. And so if you're not careful by limiting innings, the problem I was having is it becomes a great race at midnight Pacific time. Who can log onto the site and grab the next day's starters? And you just keep churning, the back half of the rotation over and over again all season long. And basically that's what a lot of those leagues degenerated into, which is why I got out of them.
Yeah, that's what I found on the one ESPN team I have that, I don't pay very much attention to it. I'm only in it because I got invited in with a bunch of other industry guys. And like you said, if I don't change my starting pitchers every single day, they let you have 8 or 9, but you still have to cut 2 or 3 every day and pick up 2 or 3 that are playing. And it just became a daily thing of not really knowing who's going to do well, but just, like you said, racing somebody else to the waiver wire. Which is fine if you want to do that, but I kind of like to set a lineup once a week and then maybe make some trades during the week or think about things during the week, but not have to, before I go to bed every night, make a waiver claim or 5 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, it definitely gets taxing after 3 months or so.
Yeah. So you probably noticed some changes in Scoresheet by taking so many years off.
Yeah, so all of the web interface stuff is actually new to me this year. Both the drafting and the lineup cards.
Yeah, the lineup cards, it wasn't that many years ago. We were still charging $4 or $5 for each week for lineup changes, which was kind of a pain for some people. Obviously, it got a little expensive if you really wanted to make a change every week. And then on top of that, it was pretty slow if you had to fill one out by hand and then fax it in or put it in the mailbox. So yeah, definitely the web lineup form with free lineups, and plus, if you want to make one change now, you don't have to fill out a whole form. You just change one line.
Right, and it gives you the responsiveness of other fancy formats give you now, ESPN, Yahoo, whatever, and that, your prospect gets called up, you can just pop on, put in a lineup, forget about it after that. I remember having to pile up lineup changes. I'd have a little 3x5 card or whatever for a league. Say, okay, now there's 4 things to do, now I'll send a new lineup. Now, I read a little blip about a player and just change the lineup and good to go.
Yeah, and you don't have to wait till the deadline or anything. If our deadline's Thursday morning this year, but if on Monday afternoon you see, oh wait, Goldschmidt got called up, I need to get him in my lineup. They're free and they're easy, so hopefully people are making.
Right.
I have seen that people make lineup changes throughout the week now, and that way, if you make one Monday afternoon and then you don't think about it till Thursday and you miss the deadline, at least you've made the one change you really wanted to make that week.
Of course, the downside, if you make changes in the middle, you kind of think you're done, and maybe you don't switch your starters Wednesday night once you have all the data for the week.
Yeah, well, I think in any fantasy game, any fantasy game, you do have to pay some attention. We don't really want it to be where you just kind of turn in a lineup week 1 and forget about it. So we're trying to hit that kind of balance where you stay involved, make changes maybe every week, make some trades during the year, but you don't have to study the weather report.
So gameplay-wise, the one major change I feel there is with the online lineup cards is the team to face column. It used to be that you would basically pick the most lefty lineup and point your lefties there for the year. Nowadays, it seems like you could just keep pointing Halliday at your strongest opponent every week. Do you think people have found a problem with that?
I haven't really heard so. I think part of it is that, of course, you don't play your opponent, your strongest opponent every week. You play him, maybe 7 3-game series a year, so you play him about every 3rd or 4th week. And then that prefer to face column doesn't work 100% of the time. There are some instances where, for instance, if you have 3 series in a week, the team you're playing in the middle, you can't have any of your pitchers pitch twice against. It's kind of thinking like having days off. So there's once in a while you'll put, I want Halliday to face team 1, but if you play team 1 that week and you're playing 3 different teams that week and team 1 is the middle series, he won't actually get a start against team 1. So it doesn't work 100% of the time. And I don't know that it works that much more than it does in real life. In real life, teams kind of change their lineups around. The Angels did it when they played the Rangers last weekend. They tried to change their rotation around so they could have their better pitchers go against the Rangers. I don't think it. I mean, it might matter a little bit, if your race comes down to one game at the end of the year and you've done something that won you 1 or 2 extra games, that's the difference between coming in first or second. But I don't think it's a huge deal that people think is unfair. The one thing I would like to, I'm kind of trying to press programmer Dave to do next year is, much like some of these other online games do, is have a few more stats available so that, on your lineup card when you're really trying to decide if you want to play, say, Wigington at second base or Jacob Turner at second base or something, actually have stats right next to each other right on the lineup card to make, instead of having to click on a different window and see that. ESPN you can.
Right, or defensive ratings especially. I sometimes lose track of who my defensive subs are supposed to be, and it'd be good to have that just as its own column right there on the lineup card.
Yeah, I think stats like that, now that we've kind of got the basics down, I mean, we kind of did, this year we worked more on a kind of a visual change to the whole website to try to get it to look less like an accounting report and a little more like a baseball sheet.
Right.
So hopefully next year we'll have more stats. But much as people like the web lineup, I think by far our most popular change in 25 years of doing this was to introduce that web draft system.
Oh yes, the web draft is definitely great.
Yeah, I think even, like our local league, where drafting in person is still the best. But as people move around or get kids and have a hard time finding a night everyone get together, even our local league, we get together but for 3 hours now instead of 8. We draft maybe 10 or 15 rounds. And then we do the rest by the web draft because it really gives you a ton of control over who you get.
Yeah, and I actually did most of my drafting from Hawaii this year, which would not have been possible if I was doing live drafts.
Yeah, probably worked kind of nice sitting on the beach with a laptop trying to figure out what baseball player to pick.
Sure. Burned me a couple times though. I can go out on the board once more before I pick. Oops. Can't believe I got that guy.
Yeah, well, I don't usually cut it that close. I'm one of those guys I kind of put in a list at night and then I just don't check much till the next night. Because I find otherwise, I know the first year or two we had the web draft, I'd do that thing of I'd think about something for 8 hours, I'd make a logical decision, and then 30 seconds before my pick I'd get some flash of inspiration and change my whole mind. You pick a different guy, and of course the guy you originally had always ends up having a better year.
Of course.
Yeah. But then that's turned out to be pretty popular, that web draft, though.
Yeah, it's definitely a great feature.
Huh. So you think overall things have gotten better in your 6 or 8 year absence, huh?
I think so, yeah. A lot more control over the team, and I'm in the fantasy owner group who likes to control, not necessarily obsess. And so it's definitely got that going for it now.
Huh. Well, that's good. And then getting back to the original thing of your probable pitchers, I guess, because I forgot to ask this, what have you found to be maybe the most difficult thing? Is it teams not reporting injuries or weather changes or any particular thing that makes it tough?
I'm not sure if there's one thing that makes it tough. The biggest thing I found early on was that a person starting Wednesday, if that was his team's 7th start of the week, he would often wind up getting bumped into that Thursday or Friday because there's a rain out or they decide to call some prospect or something. If the team only plays 6 games during the week, they have those off days to tinker with things and their schedules are much more stable. And so after 2 or 3 weeks of that kind of chaos, I started marking some pitchers are marked with a 2 and some with a question mark. And those question marks are the guys who may very well get bumped for things outside of the team's control even. It seems to be that about 25% of the time or so, they do in fact get bumped out for whatever reason. Injury, rain out, or we're going to the 6-man rotation this week in any number of reasons.
Right. Though I think in score sheet it's a little less important. In some of these, even the weekly games, the point adding games, you really want to play a guy that starts twice because he, of course, is going to have more innings to get, say, strikeouts or chance for an extra win. Whereas in score sheet, rather than, I'm not sure that's as important as just playing how well they're going to do. I mean, I know when I'm doing my lineup, I don't really pay too much attention to whether they're going to start twice. I just worry more about who I think's going to pitch better, and whoever I think's going to pitch better is who I put in the rotation or higher in the rotation.
Right, but it matters for teams to face because if it's a 6-game week and you have 3 people starting twice, you kind of want to know who's going to get the double start, and if they're all question mark guys, then it's a bit more random as to how your week's going to turn out. And so you might choose to put the guy who's definitely starting twice first in your rotation to make sure that you can control where he goes, and just the other guys, either you bank their starts or don't. And so that's why I found it makes the most difference.
If folks want to check that out over the next few weeks of the season and give us feedback, give Tom some feedback, see what people think.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Tom. It's good talking to you, and hope you stick with us next year.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah. Well, welcome back to Score Sheet.
Thanks. Catch you later.
All right. Thanks a lot.